I have a question to all my older people. Do y'all remember back years ago when you were real young and your mom and dad used to put you on their knee? You know, one knee, sit you straddling the knee, and then they'd bounce that knee up and down so fast it'd be like riding a typewriter. And then after you got through, your rectum hurt and it felt like your guts were ripped out through your rectum. Y'all remember that? And then they wonder why Gen X was so tough. We had a lot of things to go through. I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised we even still got our genitals because all that bouncing and putting us on their feet and bouncing us like a horse and I'm surprised we still alive. The way we learned how to swim is our daddy picked us up and threw us in the water off a pier. That's how we learned to swim, and it was either sink or swim. You didn't have no choice. Ooh, I remember them. That was the days back there. See, these youngins these days they got it made easy. They had laws to protect them. They got that now. Back in them days, it was all for one and one for all. Whatever happened, it just happened, and you just got to be tough enough to deal with it. I remember riding in the back of the truck when my dad had an old, I want to say it was like a 1960s truck. We was real young. He had had that thing for many years. I don't know exactly what year it was, but it was a Ford. I remember, did y'all remember them old metal, steel, them things? You could run over a tree, wouldn't put a dent in that Ford. Y'all remember? And let me tell you, we were riding because we were looking for a place. We always went to this place that was way up the road, and it always went down this long dirt road, and then back in the woods, and then that was our swimming hole, what they called our swimming hole when we was younger. Well, my daddy loved snake. I no, and there's a reason why I don't like snakes, and I'm gonna tell you. Number one, my daddy used to catch king snakes and chase me around the house with them. He thought it was funny. My daddy had a weird sense of humor like I do. He thought it was funny. Even though he would do like chicken snakes and king snakes. That's what he would do. And he would chase the kids around the house, scared the holy shit out of us, excuse my language. But then there was this one time. We were back in those days, we had a place called Billy Goat Mountain, and everybody went there for whatever reason. It was open to the public back in those days. It's not now. It's actually sold to somebody. This is years ago. This is probably 40, 45 years ago or so. And my daddy had this old Ford, honey, that metal one, not them fiberglass plastic one, but you know the old Fords, the ones like I said you could run through a house and they never put a scratch on it. Well, I remember we were riding down the back roads and we went down Billy Goat Mountain. And I'll be honest with you, it was me and my two brothers, and my mom and dad was in the cab. Now, it's funny how they made us ride in the very back, in the bed while they all in the front. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have air conditioning back then in the vehicle. Don't ask, don't look for one because you wasn't going to find it unless you had money. And I remember we sitting back there. My daddy stops. And we over here, we young, and I remember it like yesterday. I'm probably 9, 10 years old. And sitting back there, now I'm a little person. Like, I was a little teeny tiny person, and all of us was pretty small kids. And my dad was bad about cutting the head, like, get big rattlesnakes. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Those huge rattlesnakes that you find that be like 5, 6 feet long. Y'all know what I'm talking about. My dad always took a machete with him. Always. My dad was not afraid of snakes. I'm terrified of snakes. And I remember being in the back of that truck, and we was sitting there talking, but we wonder why Dad had stopped. Next thing we know, we hear Daddy holler for Mama to hand him the machete. We always knew when Daddy got the machete out that he done found him a snake. No matter where, we knew it. Next thing we know, he done some during this time he done cut the head off the snake, and he comes around there. He said, "I got y'all a present," and threw this big old long rattlesnake, without the head, of course, in the back of the truck. Ruined our whole day. And this didn't happen one time. This was like 3 times on the same trip. We had 3 different snakes around that size. For us, they were like 27 feet long, but for realistically, they were probably 5, 6 feet. Though back in the day when nobody hunted those things, you know what I'm saying? Nobody really used them to make anything with. And I remember that, and I'll tell you, we would not get near. And as soon as this is no lie, as soon as Daddy pulled in at the end of the road, in which I'm still on the property that we grew up in, and this is no lie. Soon as Daddy turned in, and we live about a quarter mile off the road. We would jump out the back of the truck. We didn't care. We wouldn't having it. We would walk up the road to keep from having them with them rattlesnakes. I know it's just the body of a rattlesnake. It's just the fact it was a rattlesnake, and them things was. Y'all know when you unalive a rattle any type of snake, they continue to move. It don't matter. I wouldn't have no more problem with it if the thing wouldn't have been moving, but the whole thing moved the whole way home, so we were terrified. And my daddy doing 80 in a 1960s old Ford, while we in the back of a truck. Yeah, see, these people these days, they got it made. These kids these days don't know the hardships we went through as Gen X when we were younger. They don't know. They sit there and complain and bitch and moan, and we sitting there going, you got it easy. You don't know the half of what we went through. And they don't. They don't know the half of it. My daddy would have us catching snapping turtles. Y'all know what snapping turtles is? Not them little bitty ones. I'm talking about them ones that's like a foot and a half big enough to take off your fingers and toes. He would have us doing all kinds of stuff. And then on top of all of that, we would have to cut firewood. We had a wood burning stove back in those days, and we had my two brothers would cut firewood. I'd be the one to stay in the house and help Mama cook. That's how it was. And because my mama all had three children that were exactly as alike, basically, if you get what I'm saying. and but yeah, I remember that, like sitting in the back of the truck crying because I thought them snakes were gonna get me, even though they didn't have heads on them. But I remember when them, I can't, I guess I remember that because it was so traumatic to me that I just remember that story of sitting in the back of that truck, and it was one of them black old beat up Fords, the good ones. You could drive them through the ocean, let them dry out for a day, and they crank right back up. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You couldn't kill them things. You couldn't unalive them things. You could burn them things, like literally set them on fire, let them burn for an hour, put it out, come back and crank right back up. Y'all know what I'm talking about. You couldn't unalive them trucks. And we had one, and I'll never forget sitting in the back of that truck with me and my brothers crying, thinking them darn three big old long ugly snakes were gonna get us. And I know the bad thing about I love my daddy and I miss him every day. I hope heaven is as beautiful as he told us it was. And I know he's somewhere in the greatest place ever because of the fact that he was just a good person. And but yeah, I remember that story. Not story. I remember that of sitting in the back of that truck, waiting for them and them just watching. And we were about 30 minutes from the house, so it was all traumatic. Okay, and they just moving everywhere, twisting and rolling. You know how snakes do without the head. Y'all know. And I remember that. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. And that time that Daddy chased us around the house with a king snake. I know king snakes aren't poisonous. And Daddy would be laughing. Mom would be screaming, leave them kids alone. Put that snake down. Y'all know how parents are. Mama be in the house cooking, Daddy be laughing and chasing us, and Mom be screaming out the window. That was the good times back in those days. I mean, I know that was kind of dangerous. Not really, because it was a poison snake, but it still could have bit us. But still, but it was just a more simpler life. And we forget that simple is always the best. You don't have to have millions, millions of material things to make a great life. And that's one thing I can say about my dad. He always tried to install beautiful memories. Some of them were scary. A lot of them were scary. Like some of our fishing trips, that's where I learned to love to fish was through my dad. And just remembering the past is just a beautiful thing. Love you.